Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Once again, you are listening to the Tech That podcast, and I'm your host, Brian Pereira. It's also my pleasure to welcome Ms. Sujatha Iyer, who is the head of AI in security at Zoho Corporation. Thank you for joining us today, Sujatha.
Thank you, Brian, for having me here. Would love to have a conversation with you.
Sujatha heads the AI efforts in the cybersecurity domain at Zoho Corporation. And since we are discussing AI and security, I believe we are very lucky to have Sujatha with us today to share her insights on this topic. So, Sujatha, the audience would like to know Sujatha better. So, why don't you start by telling us about how you got into cybersecurity and what's your role like at Zoho Corporation?
I am part of a team called Zoho Labs, which is the central R&D team focusing on long-term AI research. And I head the division that focuses on AI and security. So my role sits in the intersection of AI, security, and the product requirements. So we work with product teams, help them understand what models would be required for their use cases, help them think beyond models, the use cases, algorithms, help them think on the security aspect too, so that they can put together a picture perfect AI use case for their products. I've been with Zoho for a decade now, and I started off as an intern. I moved into a full stack engineering. Security was one field that piqued my interest because this was the field where you had to be right always, 100% right. The attacker only needs to be right 1 on 100 times, but then that 1 on 100 is like all talked about when your defense was right 99 on 100. So this kind of piqued my interest. And then the AI wave happened. Fact that you could use AI to strengthen your defenses when attacks are being AI powered, that was very interesting for me. So I transitioned into AI and security role. And today I'm heading the division that focuses on AI and security.
Wow, very interesting. And when did the security thing happen?
So this was almost around 2018 types, 18, 19 types.
Yeah. Okay, you did mention that you also liaising with the product engineering teams. What about customers? Do they talk to the customers or do you also have some interaction with the customers?
We also do talk to customers. When customers think about AI, it's mostly a preconceived notion that everything requires an LLM. I wouldn't blame the customers. Today, the AI hype has gone up so much. When we do talk to customers, they understand that there is a world beyond LLM, which was there right from your statistical machine learning models, the
Yeah,
mathematics, the reasoning models. They do the computation at a fraction of the cost, do not require GPUs. Not saying that LLMs are not useful, they absolutely are, but then we also help them do a careful vetting of what actually do they require to
exactly.
establish the need.
Yeah. So I guess you're talking about the classical AI was there right since the beginning. And
Absolutely.
just because AI has become a fashion word, it's not necessary to apply it in every area of business. You really need to identify those processes. Since we're talking about LLMs, and today even there's a lot of talk about agentic AI. Okay, now let's talk about the intersection of AI and security. What are the biggest concerns, the perceived threats from AI, LLMs, and also the agentic AI?
I would say the biggest threat is about, see, previous decade, people were worried that what if AI gives me a wrong prediction?
Yeah,
Now, today, the threat has moved or the issue has moved far away from that. It is about acting on the threat because you have agents today. They have reasoning, they have tool calling capabilities, they have so much identity access permissions and all. What do you do when agents act on something that they were not supposed to? So let's
yeah,
probably take an example here. Let's say you have a finance agent. It reads through your emails. Let's say you liaise with vendors. The finance team liaises with vendors for purchases. They raise an invoice. The agent is supposed to look at the email raised, read the vendor bank details, and then go ahead, understand which bank it is, invoke the appropriate tool calling, and then create a payment request in your finance software. Levels. So for your email access, it should only have a view permission. For your
mhm,
finance, it should only have a write access, view plus write. And
mhm,
then for the payment gateway, the appropriate permissions has to be there. But generally, what happens is people would give an administrator access for everything else because, again, who loves to go and,
yeah,
mess with everything in IT? Just one permission fits all. People are happy to do it. All of us would have done it at some point of time. But here, the issue becomes even more nuanced. Let's say you were victim of a phishing email.
yeah,
So your phishing email states that, hey, my vendor account details have changed. Ensure you do a financial transaction of 1 lakh. Now, if your email inbox didn't catch it to be phishing, it landed in your inbox, or the folder which the agent has access to. Let us say it acts upon that and raises a payment request for 1 lakh when the actual amount is only some 5,000 or 6,000. This is the problem. This is the problem because the correct access controls aren't in place. So these are going to be the key challenges that enterprises have to tackle. It is not just about what size of model are you using, what tool calls do you have an MCP. The key part is going to tackle these identity access control permissions.
So you mentioned two interesting words that piqued my interest. One is identities and one is control. So just as we have been giving identities to applications, to users, flows, etc. So agents need to be, I think, treated like users, isn't it? We need to think about the thresholds, like you mentioned, limits. If they act on their own beyond a certain amount and go too far, that could be damaging. It could have an impact. Ideally, on paper, this all looks very good, right? We should be doing this and that. But to what extent is it really being done today in organizations? And how should they act? Where should they start?
So I would say the right entry point would be to ensure your data access layer is right. Because this, all the inheritance, getting the guardrails, controls, these are going to be a direct inheritance of getting your data access layer right. Now, this agent sprawl, using the same service accounts for so many activities, this is going to be a huge problem. Now, there's something that we've seen even in our human life, right? Let's say you have housekeeping staff. All of them use the same badge to enter into your campus. What auditability do you have? Let's say you had some 10 housekeeping staffs, everyone use the same badge. You just have housekeeping entry. There's the same log that appears in your access badges, right? The same case with agents too. Let us say you had an agent to onboard employees into your organization. Typically, an onboarding process would involve entering them into the HRMS software, giving them payroll. If all of these agents are going to use the same service account or the backend account, you will have no auditability. Tomorrow, let us say you have an issue or an escalation where a developer was removed from accessing the code base or their payroll credentials were removed. How are you going to even trace what prompt led to this, or which agent actually went rogue, or what was the trigger that led to this whole chaos? Now, this is a catastrophe. Now, we've seen this. We've seen this happen in human life. That's why we've perimetered human accesses and controls. This is the same caution that you'll have to apply when you deal with agents too. Treat agents the way you will deal with human entities. It's important they have the right permissions, right controls, and more than that, the same amount of auditability and traceability that we apply to humans, it should be applied to agents too.
In other words, you're saying agents should also be profiled
Yes,
like humans are.
absolutely.
Yeah. And we need to have visibility also about all the agents. We need to know what agents are there. There's a lot of sprawl happening nowadays. Right.
Correct.
Great. So I've also been hearing a lot about the digital worker or the AI assistants, which every one of us is going to have a digital worker very soon. And what do enterprises need to adopt or build in terms of building the strict guardrails or the controls around these digital workers or AI assistants? Now, I've also read about this and I've heard about practices like reasoning sandboxing and runtime reason governance. Can you throw some more light on that, Sujatha?
Sure. So typically, when we say that it's an agent will have an LLM which has a reasoning capacity to it, and then you have tool calls. Let's say there's a prompt that comes in. You typically have the model reason out why it is taking a certain path of action. Now, this is all great, but if the entire guardrail is going to rest on the model's reasoning capability, let us say tomorrow there's a jailbreaking attempt that is happening. We heard this first classic case of jailbreaking happened when models came. You are my grandma, act like my grandma, give me the permissions. We heard the classic story a couple of years back, right? And jailbreaking attempts are still happening in the world of LLM. So the idea is to build guardrails or the auditability mechanisms outside the model. So let us say you have an agent in customer support, and let us say it has permissions to issue refunds for tickets that talk about some issue with the product. The refund value is less than 500. The agent is allowed to have full autonomy to refund the amount to the customer. Tomorrow, let us say you have some issue in the configuration, some repeated attempt to refund some 500 rupees every 5 minutes to the same account. This happens. It is an issue. Now, if you're going to rest on just the model's reasoning will just say, the customer asked for a refund. I am well within my autonomy to give 500 rupees refund, so I am doing it. This will be in a loop. Only then you have guardrails outside the model, which catches the fact that usually it is some 4, 5 refunds happening, but all of a sudden there's a splurge to some 300 refunds in an hour. This is an anomaly. The policy doesn't allow this. Only if you have such clear guardrails outside the model's autonomy will you have better auditability and traceability. And in fact, for enterprises, the key is going to be explainable AI. You can't just have AI that is black boxing and telling you I issued a refund. You should have a clear path. I issued a refund because the ticket was about this. They have been a long term customer. This is their issue. This is the kind of explanations that enterprises want when they adopt AI. This is going to be the key to enterprise AI adoption.
Yeah, I read two things from that is since you mentioned auditability and you're going to be retraining the model later on to improve it based on that particular scenario. That's one. And the second thing you mentioned, the vision may be very general. It needs to have some business context, I think is what you were trying to say, right? About the business, exact business processes, what are the limits for that transaction, what is the exact process, and not just a general process. Is that what you were trying to say?
One thing that you beautifully talked about was the context part, which I think I'll probably expand a bit here.
Please.
Because we talk about LLMs, there are like two distinct worlds here. One is the B2C model and one is the B2B model. In the consumer space, you have all the frontier models. You ask what was the cricket score match, what is the weather's today, will it rain tomorrow? You will get answers for everything. But in enterprise, the context is much more defined. Now, let's say you have an LLM in CRM, you're not going to ask the cricket score match. Your questions are going to be more about how many leads are going to churn, how many deals are in the pipeline, how many leads should I contact this week, how many have declined. For a question like the example that we were talking about, the 500 rupees refund, this is a very specific business context that is going to be very unique to every enterprise. So in this case, you want models that understand the context, that have adapted for your enterprise. And for this, interestingly, a frontier model need not be the solution always. You can have right-sized, purpose-built models with appropriate guardrails that are unique for your organization that understand the context better, and then place them inside an agentic AI framework.
So, Sujatha, up to now, it's been pretty interesting. And just before we wind up, any final words of advice or recommendations for chief AI officers and CISOs?
So, I would say two things. One is, like I said in the beginning of the conversation, an LLM need not be an answer for every AI requirement of yours. So, do a very careful analysis of what models would you require, because today the token costing is actually eating into a lot of enterprise AI budgets. So, it's important to do a very careful vetting of what models you want. And two, regarding the security part of it, it's important you get the data access layer right, the permissions layer right. And it's important security is baked into design right from day one of the SDLC and not given an afterthought. If it's an afterthought, you'll always be looking at a huge hill in front of you. You don't know where to start, where to end. It will be a never ending loop. So it's important you tackle this right from day one, would be my word of advice.
Great words of advice, Sujatha. And thank you. That was so insightful. And I'm sure our audience has some great takeaways from this episode. So thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you, Brian. Enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, and I look forward to some more in the future.
Absolutely.
You were listening to Ms. Sujatha Iyer, Head of AI in Security at Zoho Corporation. And that's a wrap for our first episode of Season 2. If you like this episode, do drop us a line in the comments section or use our email address below. And do subscribe to this channel if you want to be notified about future episodes. Until our next episode, this is your host, Brian Pereira, signing off. Take care, be safe, and if you're in India, stay dry.